Hi everyone, and welcome here today. Isn't it great to have a full room of people? My golly, how fantastic. My name is Wendy Keach. I'm the CEO of HealthTranslation SA, South Australia's academic health science and translation centre, and really pleased to be here today welcoming you. But firstly, I'd like to acknowledge we're meeting on Kaurna land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and just acknowledge that the land means something very important, and so does the October 14th date. A very important date, and there's no doubt that depending on where the vote goes, it has the potential to absolutely improve the health of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in Australia. So I'll leave that sitting with you. But look, as I said, I'm really pleased to welcome you on behalf of the organising committee that got this event together. And it has been a real collaboration. And if you know anything about HealthTranslation SA, that's what we're about. We're about bringing people together, collaborating, and really trying to be the catalyst and broker that South Australia needs to actually actively take things to, build things, get things going. And having this here today really represents there's a lot of interest in the clinical trial space. And to that end, we're really pleased, as I said, to be part of the organising committee. You're going to hear from most of the people who are part of that organising committee today. And we wanted to acknowledge, firstly, the SAHMRI Clinical Trials Platform and the wonderful Karen, who will take off in a moment. Also the Office for Research and the Department of Health and Wellbeing. And I know Ben's here, but Jess, there's various people here today that are representing that office. And then from HealthTranslation SA, we have Tamara Hooper, who's here somewhere, and you're going to hear from her today as well. Karen's going to go through the program and things with you, and I'm really pleased that you're going to get a whole lot of tasters today. And I guess that's why it was spring into clinical trials, because we're springing around, giving you a nibble on a whole lot of things. And I think this is part of where we need to go in the future, actually bringing this community together on a regular basis, telling people stories about what is happening in South Australia, not what's not happening in South Australia, the things that are happening, and really build that vibe of we can make a great place. I've had some really interesting conversations in the last few weeks about the clinical trial environment and where we can take it. And really, the stories you hear today are going to be exactly that, what people are doing to hold on to things and get them moving. So look, I'm really, as I said, really pleased to be here. Spring into clinical trials. It's a beautiful day, and updating you on these local and national initiatives is really what we're on about to optimise clinical trials in South Australia. So enjoy today, but also look out for things in the future, because it's not going to be a one-off. I think there's opportunity, and we'll be looking for what that actually looks like over time. Just to mention that these translation centres, there's actually 14 of them across Australia, and we have the opportunity to learn and grow from the others. But I do feel that having these kind of events where we're really bringing people together is a great opportunity for South Australia, as we are a statewide centre. So with that, I think I've done everything I was supposed to. I'll get Karen to come on up and introduce herself, and then take away the day. So thanks for coming.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Wendy. We're really grateful to be collaborating with HealthTranslation SA and Department of Health and Wellbeing to put on this event today. And it's really wonderful to see so many people interested in clinical trials. We had over 240 people register. Many of you in the room have been able to enjoy some lunch, but a big hello to those online also. We've got people joining from all over South Australia, from Mount Gambier and the Riverland and Port Augusta. And we also have a few of our interstate colleagues online. So welcome. We have 3 presentations today, and we've allowed 5 minutes of question time after each presentation. If you're asking a question in the auditorium, we would ask that you'd wait, put your hand up and wait for the microphone so that the people online will be able to hear. If you're online and have a question, if you enter it in the chat, we have Carlia here from HealthTranslation SA who will read out the questions in question time. So I'm just going to start with a bit of background on SAHMRI. So most of you, I'm sure, will have heard of SAHMRI, South Australian Health and Medical Research Institute. We're South Australia's flagship independent not-for-profit medical research institute, and we're committed to improving health through collaboration and translational research. So the clinical trials platform was established in late 2021, and we're a growing team of clinical research professionals, including operations managers, research coordinators, project managers, CRAs, a trial assistant, and a digital marketing officer. So we operate as an academic research organisation to support both investigator-initiated and industry-sponsored trials from phase 1B to phase 4. Our services that we offer include study coordination, project management. We offer monitoring services, and we also have a full statistical service, which is provided by the SAHMRI Biostatistics Unit, which is led by Dr. Lisa Yellen and Dr. Tom Sullivan. And we also act as a site for community-based trials where we can see participants who don't need to be seen in a health service. In addition to our academic research organisation capabilities, we also have a digital marketing recruitment campaign service. And this came about from a need that we needed to recruit more participants for our trials online. So we designed our own service that we now offer to others as well. So the service includes design of online screening surveys and all of the graphic designs for advertising materials and monitoring of the campaign throughout the life of the study. So people will see these appealing ads online with just a little bit of information about the study. They then click through to a web page that has more detailed information. And from there, if they choose to, they can self-screen for eligibility. So that's a little bit about what we do, a little bit about where we're going. So our vision is to accelerate the translation of research into real-world impact by providing exceptional participant-centred services and support. We've identified 5 key strategic priorities that we'll need to sort of work on over the next 5 years to be able to achieve our vision. That's quality, partnerships, workforce, recruitment, and I can't see the other slide. But with all of that, with all of the services we offer, we also are committed to improving and optimising clinical trial landscape, not just here in SAHMRI, but also in South Australia. And that's pretty much how today came about. So sorry, can you go back a slide? It's stuck. Yep. So why clinical trials? The World Health Organization definition of a clinical trial is that they're a type of research that studies new tests or treatments and evaluates their effects on human health outcomes. I think we all agree that we've all come a long way since one of the first documented randomised trials in 1747, when James Lind, Scottish physician, randomised 6 groups of sailors to 6 different treatments and established that citrus fruits actually prevented and cured scurvy. So we all know that clinical trials help build the future of medicine, and that today's clinical trials are tomorrow's standard of care. But although the reason that we do trials hasn't changed, the landscape in which we offer is changing all of the time, the landscape in which we operate. So this is a little snapshot from the Australian Clinical Trials, Australia-New Zealand Clinical Trial Register, which was established in 2006. And it shows that since then, there's been more than 18,000 trials which have been registered, and over 40% of those have been in the last 5 years. So there's a lot of activity. These trials have included more than 9 million participants. And as you can see from the graph on the right there, they're the disease areas studied the most, with cancer, mental health and cardiovascular disease in the top 3. It's also a similar picture worldwide. This snapshot is from clinicaltrials.gov, which shows there's over 460,000 trials that have been registered since the register was made available in the year 2000. And in 2023, the National Library of Medicine reported more than 100 active trials in that year worldwide. Sorry, worldwide at the moment. So while there's definitely increased activity in this space, there's also increased complexity in the clinical trial space. Here in Australia, we have the National Clinical Trial Governance Framework, which I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, would have heard about and have even been involved with accreditation or preparing for that within your health service. We have the TGA Clinical Good Clinical Practice Inspection Program, which means that any site can be audited at any time by the TGA for good clinical practice compliance. We also have the revision of the Good Clinical Practice Guidelines, A-CTEC Revision 3, which is out for public consultation at the moment. And we also have some updates to our national statement. So there's a lot that we need to keep up to date with, be aware of. So we're really thankful to also have some great initiatives nationally that we can be involved with to help, with how we do our day-to-day work. So they're the Australian Teletrials program, who are bringing clinical trials to our regional and rural populations. There's the Australian Clinical Trials Education Centre, or A-CTEC, delivering clinical trials education to everybody. And there's also HealthTranslation, which is an initiative of the Australian Research Data Commons. And they're helping us to reuse the valuable data that we collect from our participants. So I'll finish there and I'll introduce you to our first two speakers. We have Pascal Detviller and Amy Garrett from the Australian Teletrial program in South Australia to give you an update and a bit of a how-to guide. So please make them welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon to those who are online today listening to this fabulous program we put together, and thank you for the organizers for having us presenting. So we're going to present on the Australian Teletrial, myself and Amy. And first, I will start with an update of where we're at. And I apologize for those who are already listened to some of these talks, but I hope the slides have changed. We also want to acknowledge country and also to acknowledge any Aborigine and Torres Strait Islander present here and online. A little bit of update, how to guide, and if we have time, questions. So I think this is a major slide everyone is waiting and was asking us for. So where are we at with the Australian Teletrial program in South Australia? So this is a maturity scale of different projects we have been undertaking for the last 18 months. And the two first lines illustrate two projects that have been coming to fruition and are under recruitment. And I want to acknowledge Professor Tim Price, present in the audience, for the support he gave us for that #1 oncology study, which is a collaborative work with Northern Territory as well. We have 3 mental health studies coming up soon. They're nearly in the green. And then we have renal, oncology, and endocrinology being understudied. Some allied health intervention. There is 3 of them under review. There is a big arrow because they will recruit a number of patients across regional settings. And also, I want to thank you, the nuclear medicine groups present here today, who have actually supported the teletrial since its inception. And we're welcoming that building here that's going to be open here next week, or the keys are going to be given next week. And the nuclear medicine teams have been supporting the teletrial from the beginning, actually preparing from the future. And I think they also need to be acknowledged. But we're also at the cutting edge of what can happen. And we are actually studying 2 artificial intelligence protocols at the teletrial currently. So that's where we are. That's what you probably have to remember for the whole presentation. Little bit of questions, and thank you, Karen, for paving the talk. So if you would like to take your phones and scan the QR code for the first question, or call the slido.com on your browser and put the numbers in. Where's the slide? Yep. So a little bit of background. Where are we coming from and where are we going? So it's we under a Commonwealth award of 75 million that is being granted for 5 years, and that the Queensland Health government is administering. And you can see that the different national partners are listed at the bottom of the slide, excepting New South Wales, who is running a different program on their own. We are working closely with the Northern Territory for 3 years, like Victoria is working closely with Tasmania for 3 years. So a lot of opportunity for collaboration. And we're here for 5 years, so thank you for those who supported us since last year, but there is 3 exciting years to come up. Just a reminder on the Teletrial cluster model. So we have a primary site and satellite sites. The primary site is where the protocol is nested and where we have the principal investigator delegating to satellite sites. You can see from the little infographic that not everything needs to be done on each site, and that allows actually the patient to access clinical trials from far from the principal sites. It's a very collaborative model in between private, public, primary health care, universities, and also in between states' clinical networks. Our vision is to reach patients at home and provide trial medication closer to home using the telehealth that shouldn't be confused with the teletrial. And we have 4 objectives to deliver on, and the major one being developing a workforce capacity and capabilities. And we heard from Karen as well, that's really what we all aim for, and it's why we're here together talking to you. Where are we drawing our data from to actually establish which clinical trials are or will be viable as a teletrial? I want to acknowledge our partners from the University of South Australia, Department of Rural Health, who have actually designed a dashboard that actually now help us to identify where the sore points are. And on the tabs at the top, it's probably too small. But I'm happy to share that with you. You have different diseases, and you can just click on it and see what's happened. On the right-hand side, it's quite interesting to see that in South Australia, there is a distribution of interstate principal investigators and local investigators who give a distribution of 50 or 40, 60 clinical trials that are administered internally or externally. On the middle slide with the green histogram, you'll see that on the 4, 5 bottom ones, there's nothing appearing. This is our MM3 to 7 that we're targeting through the teletrials, and currently there is less than 1% of activities happening. So a lot to do. To achieve that, we have 4 pillars, a support program incentive, education and training. You'll hear a little bit more in the next presentation, logistic and equipment and operational support, which is our staff. And there's plenty of us today, Jess, Renee, Amy, myself, Emily, and Paul Worley. I have a meeting, anyone? Ben. I have to acknowledge the general manager. Support incentive programs is probably what you want to hear first. So how much money will I get? You'll get $10,000 for changing a clinical trial into a teletrial, or for designing a teletrial from the beginning, on recruiting in satellite sites where the participants live in an MM3 to 7, and you get $700 for the recruitment. You can use this money to your discretion. You can use it to actually enable the participants to travel to Metro, or you can use it, to actually snowball and develop more research. The blue box is about the additional money, looking at logistic equipment and training. And that Karen mentioned, we have the A-CTEC who offers training for free. Who are we? We're a team of 9 based in Adelaide and also Ruvalli. I'm based in Port Lincoln, and we have 3 study nurses, 1 in Mongambia, 1 in Berry, and 1 in Whyalla. I want to acknowledge today, some of them being online and some being here with us. So please do feel free to talk to Emily if you're interested. So just reminding where Whyalla, Berry, and Mongambia are located for our interstate colleague or people we're presenting to. You also can see that the decision was made to cover the east side of the country of South Australia, with Berry and Mont Gambier, which are the biggest kind of population centers, and Whyalla being the center for the west. But that doesn't mean we will not open other sites along the way if the need occurs. So these 3 sites have different capability to actually develop clinical trials. And you can see that Mont Gambier is already kind of at a level 1 or 2 of capability. We're using a capability frameworks that the trial hub at the Alfred has designed and that the ATP has recognized as being the tool to actually measure this capability. And it's a kind of living tool that will move with the development of this capability, and that we hope that will reach maturity in 2026 when the program finishes. We're happy as well to talk about this Teletrial Connect Care, and I have a few of these samples here if you want to have some to take home. They are little leaflets designed by the Alfred Trial Hub, the Australian Teletrial, and the Cancer Council to explain to consumers, you know, how actually teletrial works. So designed by consumers for consumers. And also, if you're interested, there is a publication just came out in the last few weeks relating to kind of exploring in Australia how actually a regional patient, culturally and diverse participants can be recruited, and where are the barriers and how we can address it. So it's definitely equity access being addressed by this program, but we're also looking at the diversity of the recruitment, and I think that will be very close to your heart. I won't go into the clinical trial definition because Karen gave a very good one, and I leave Amy to give you a how-to guide.
Thanks, Pascal. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of the setup of teletrials and all the documentation. Right. So the most common question that our team sort of gets asked initially is, well, how do I even know if my trial can be a teletrial? So just to note, it only has to be one visit that can be done at the satellite site. It doesn't have to be the whole trial. We can, you know, it might be that the primary site starts off, does an initial assessment, and then their patient is transferred back to their satellite site. So it doesn't have to be all, can be just some of the visits. It also obviously depends on the capacity and capability of the satellite site. Currently with the ATP, it does have to be an interventional clinical trial. So registry randomized controlled trials are fine, but if they're registry only trials, they're not considered teletrials currently. You can either start the trial as a teletrial from the beginning, so set it up as a teletrial, or you can convert an existing trial, something that's already running. If you identify a patient who lives regionally, we can convert it into a teletrial. But please come and talk to us. You know, if you're not sure or there's something we can discuss, we'd really love to talk it through with you guys. Okay, so before I start, obviously I'm going to go through all the documents, as I said, but please know that we are here. This is my role. I'm the cluster startup specialist. It's my role to do all this documentation. So don't feel that I'm sending you off to go and do it alone. Please come and work with us. And we can take that bit off your plate. So initially, when you're looking at doing teletrial, the best thing you can start by doing is looking at our website, which has this checklist on it, which is the evaluation of a clinical trial as a teletrial checklist. So it just goes through various different sections. So it's kind of a per protocol checklist that you would do, and it looks at the investigational product, you know, how's it stored, how could we transport it to site, how's it prepared, the pathology, is it central processing or do the samples have to be sent off, what kind of imaging is required, and what or each of the visits contain. And it just gets you thinking about all of those things and whether there is capacity to move that to a satellite site or what parts could be done at a satellite site. And then the kind of complementary checklist to that is the evaluation of a site as a satellite site checklist. So again, it goes through very similar things, but that's looking at it from the point of view of the capacity of the satellite site. So we can help you a lot with that, because obviously currently, particularly our nurses are doing capacity and capability evaluations at our regional SA satellite sites. But it just does, you know, complementary, those two checklists together make it really useful for them for moving forward and looking at the feasibility of the teletrial. So once we think it looks feasible, we want to go and get our support from the sponsor. So we just need to know that they're obviously happy to run it as a teletrial. Generally just involves explaining the model a little bit more to them. And then that they're happy to support those sites as satellite sites. So they might want to come and visit the site or, you know, have a look at that checklist and check that it does have capacity. And this is where the PI support has been really integral. Once the PIs are on board, generally the sponsors are on board as well. So then our first piece of teletrial documentation is the PICs. So we do need to get the participants to agree to participate in the trial by telehealth. So there's two ways we can sort of update or change the PICs. So either we can update the master PIC with teletrial wording. So you still only have then your one master, but with some extra wording in it. Or we do have a standalone teletrial PIC that we can just add to that. So they have to do their main PIC as well first, but then also do the, if they're part of the teletrial, do the standalone teletrial PIC as well. And then we can submit to HealthTranslation. So either you can start up the trial as a teletrial or convert it, do an amendment and to convert it to a teletrial. Obviously, you want to have your additional satellite sites listed. We do have a cover letter just to explain that it is being added, they are being added as a satellite site rather than just a traditional site. Obviously, CVs and GCPs, your PIC, so either your updated master or your standalone teletrial PIC. And then also you do need to update the CTN if the investigational product is being used at the satellite sites as well. And then once we have our HealthTranslation approval, we can move on to our primary site RGO submission. So a little bit more teletrial documentation. So probably the most important document that we do for teletrials is the supervision plan. So this is the document that exists between the primary site and the satellite site, and it details that relationship that those two sites are going to have. So it's really important because obviously they might be doing, satellite site might be doing very little, or they might be very new to trials. So they might need a lot more support from the primary site, or maybe they're, you know, have done a lot of trials before and have a lot of experience, so they don't need as much support, but we can put that all into a plan. And so it does contain different sections. So for example, the communication between the sites, there is supposed to be regular meetings between the two sites. So it just details how often they'll occur and what they'll talk about. There's also an education section. So, you know, who's going to be training the staff, how's the SIV going to happen. Also staff coverage. Obviously the satellite sites are often smaller with less staff. So who's going to be there if someone's off sick or there's, you know, someone goes on holidays. There's also details about recruitment, consenting and randomization. So whose responsibility is that? Who's entering the data for that? Clinical care decisions, is the satellite site able to make those decisions or not? And then also safety reporting. So whose responsibility is it if something happens at the satellite site or primary site for a patient? Whose responsibility is it to report that? And who, and sorry, I've also check the time. Yeah, and then whose responsibility is it to submit that to the relevant HealthTranslation RGOs, etc. There are 3 different templates that are available for this. Please get them off the Medicines Australia website. There is a random like SA Health template floating around on the internet. Please don't use that. Please go to the Medicines Australia website. There's different ones depending on the satellite site's level of experience and the staff available there. So have a look through those. And then we get onto contracts. So with teletrials, we use a subcontract. So obviously, generally, the primary site will have a main contract with the sponsor, but then we do a subcontract between the primary site and the satellite site. So therefore, we can add in whatever parts that the satellite site is doing. There is also templates available for that on the Medicines Australia website. And then the other thing we need to do is amend the current CTRA that exists between the sponsor and the primary site. So that's just to add in your satellite sites and also add in any budgeting requirements to the Schedule 2 if there's any additional funding that the sponsor is willing to pay for the satellite site. Just noting, a bit of a blank slide to note that we also do need to update the indemnity or do a new indemnity for the satellite sites. And then you could submit to the primary site RGO. Obviously, you need your approval from the HealthTranslation with the teletrial documents there. You also need your support from your sponsor. We do also do generally a bit of a cover letter from the PI just to say that they're happy to oversee the teletrial and oversee the cluster. then your CVs, GCPs, and your updated CTN as well. And then once you've done that and the primary site has approved, you can go and do your submission to the satellite site RGO. So generally we do try and prepare those parallel, so that then the satellite site RGO is just waiting for that primary site RGO approval, just to save on time a little bit. But yeah, it's the same, generally the same submission, just with obviously the satellite site sign-offs there. And that is our team up there. If you do have any questions or you want to talk about anything, please do send us an email. As I said, we're here to help, and we're not here to just send you guys off to go and do teletrials by yourself. So please do send us an email. We're always happy to chat or set up a Teams and talk some more. And thank you.
Thanks so much, Pascal and Amy. It's great to hear how well the Teletrials program is going, and also all that practical advice so that people actually know how to go about it. I'm really glad you're there to help with all of that documentation, because that's a bit of a nightmare for some people. Did anyone have a question in the audience here? While you're thinking, we might see, are there any online questions? Oh, sorry, Wendy, the mic's on the way.
Hi, thank you. That was really interesting. How does it link with the other national, other trials happening nationally? Is there links, or is it completely separate?
Some of the trials we have under review are national clinical trials with a site in South Australia that is interested in engaging in teletrial and creating satellite site to increase recruitment. Some of the projects are just local. As you saw from my diagram, kind of 60% are local in SA, but 40% or 45% come from actually interstate. And there are your disease groups. It's not always pharma sponsored. It's also the groups of the different diseases who are actually running clinical trials and who have principal investigators in different states and territories. And so actually our teletrial become part of this big project that's run somewhere in Sydney, as it happens. So we have to wait for paperwork often. That's how it works, yes. It can be both. Thing I haven't said as well is it could be run originally, and it's certainly close to my heart to develop the capability and capabilities of our regional researchers, looking at running teletrials locally for local people and with local people, which will be really, a great success for our teletrial.
Any questions online? I was also wondering how it's been received by the communities in these locations. Have you had much feedback, and how is it sort of promoted to the regional centres?
Excellent question, Karen. Our first circle of influence, as I said this morning to our nurses, is actually the acute healthcare services, where the primary investigators operate, and also the primary health care is an area we're targeting. Then we have a second kind of circle of influence, which is the communities. So we have started a strategy around engaging with different communities in the different regions. So they can be your Rotaries, they can be your Zonta, but they also can be your cancer groups, or talking to men's sheds. We have been talking particularly in the Wayala region to interagency networks. So actually there is a lot of NGOs who operate in the health environment who actually will be critical for us to recruit participants. So that leaflet has become very timely and very useful to engage actually with these groups. So we have something to give them and also something they can look at. And I will just want to finish that it's really disheartening when we do this work and actually people come up to us and say, I've been offered a clinical trial, Pascal, but because I live in Wayala, I couldn't be enrolled. for my child has been offered a clinical trial for a new type of device for type 1 diabetes, but because we can't afford to travel, as required, we have been excluded of the clinical trials. So it's very disheartening for us to, hear that. But we know that, it's not going to happen overnight. And this type of presentation are extremely important actually for us to make that we're existing, how we operate, that we have money actually to support, the endeavors we want to build. And that there are, 500,000 of residents in country SA who are actually, denied access to clinical trials mostly. So it's up to us to work together and make that happen. And that's where our passion lies. Thank you.
Before you go, are there some questions online, Kalia?
Hello. Just to the attendees online, if you've got questions, can you put them in the Zoom chat and not the Slido chat? Unfortunately, we missed a few. Can you please explain the difference between a teletrial and a decentralized trial?
Yeah. Okay. So as the slide explains, the teletrial cluster model is actually an Australian model that has come from a work from Professor Sabesan and Professor Zackelberg in 2026 and 27, where they kind of designed this cluster model and make it, have the proof of concept. And from that proof of concept in North Queensland, they applied for the 75 million grant that was awarded by the Commonwealth. A decentralized clinical trial is an American terminology that describes actually a model to which we aspire and we hope to get to, where actually all the clinical trial is brought to the patient at home. Here in the teletrial model, the participant is still asked to come to regional sites, is still asked to come to their GP to actually receive some care. But recently, we heard some nurses-led clinical trials model, which are this decentralized clinical trial. So it's probably not too long before actually the terminology will move into decentralized clinical trial and the teletrial will fade. But in Australia, that's what we describe, as a teletrial model with a principal site and satellite site. It can be a nurse going to the patient home as well, but it is not under the decentralized clinical trial model as it's described in the United States. So basically, the United States didn't consider a cluster, a teletrial cluster model. They jumped directly into the decentralized clinical trials because big pharma also have a lot of money to distribute, and they also sponsor this nurse-led clinical trials model that decentralized from the principal sites into the home of the participants. So actually, you don't have a satellite site. It goes straight to the participants. So it's a bit different, and we do hear people using, these two terminology. But in Australia, we don't have decentralized clinical trials unless it's a nurse-led clinical trial to the home of the patient. Thank you.
Another online?
Yes.
Kalinda?
Is submission to satellite RGO done through GEMS or any other online portal?
Yeah, if it's regional SA, then yeah, it's done through GEMS, so the standard procedure. And we have a really good relationship with the regional RGO. So we're streamlining that process a little bit because they're fairly new to clinical trials in the region. So we're working closely with them to streamline that.
There's one more online. Will there be circumstances requiring CTRA/agreements between sponsor and satellite sites?
Not currently under the model. And the sponsors the feedback we've got from sponsors, they really love the subcontracts because it means they have less contracts with satellite sites. But never say never, I guess. It's not with the model, but maybe.
All right, thank you. We might leave it there, but please, it's a fantastic initiative in going towards improving the inequity in trials. So please thank Pascal and Amy. Amy, I think you're going to be busy. Okay, next up, we have Renee Deschens from who's going to talk to us about the Australian Clinical Trials Education Centre. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I'm just going to make sure I did present with Slido so that hopefully it will work. All right. My name is Renee Deschênes, and I am the Training and Development Officer with the Australian Teletrial Program in South Australia. And so it's my role to connect, it's very broad, to connect anybody involved in clinical trials with the training and development they might be looking for. And so one of our many initiatives to do that is the Australian Clinical Trials Education Centre. So A-CTEC in South Australia. What are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to talk about what A-CTEC is, what's on offer at A-CTEC, the courses that are currently available, and then we're going to dive a little bit into the uptake and engagement in South Australia. So that'll involve taking a look at the course completion breakdown, registration data, and then looking forward a little bit to seeing what's coming next, what we can hope to see on the platform, how to get involved, as well as questions and discussion. Okay, so this time, hopefully our Slido will work. I'll give you all a moment to scan the QR code. And if you're online, you can type in slido.com. Okay, 5 more seconds. Make sure we're all in. Okay, here we go. So I thought we could start out getting to know each other a little bit better and also just make sure that Slido is working. So you can look to your screen and okay, wow. And we'll find out who are our friends and who are our enemies. As a little spoiler alert, I have to go for Port Power only because when I moved to Adelaide, I moved to Port Adelaide. And so I think now I'm entrenched for life. It maybe wouldn't have been my first choice, but here we are. Okay, beautiful crows. Oh, everyone just wants to have fun as well. The crows, we don't need to talk about it. I'm sorry about your bad luck. Okay, so another quick get to know each other. Let's get an idea of who's sitting in the room with us. Do you work in clinical trials? If you're just here for the free food, that's okay. All submissions are anonymous. I won't tell anyone. Beautiful. Okay, so it looks like a lot of us are working directly in the field. And one last quick question before we dive into the presentation. Are you presently registered with A-CTEC? If you haven't heard of it, that's okay. I'll tell you everything you could ever need to know. And if you have heard of it, I promise I have some new things you don't know as well. Okay, amazing. That's really good. I'm excited. Okay, let's get into it. The Australian Clinical Trials Education Centre. So if you're here, it's, as we've discovered, likely because you work in clinical trials or you're interested in working in clinical trials. And so for a lot of us in the space, we know how difficult it is to get our hands on the information we need. A lot of our roles involve learning on the job. There's not really any formalized education pathways. And if they are, they tend to be really, really expensive. So the Australian Clinical Trials Education Centre is here to answer, to be the answer to our prayers. So it is free. And it is available to use for everybody, whether you are working in clinical trials or not, whether you're just interested, you can make an account at A-CTEC and have access to all the amazing educational resources that they have available. So like I said, free to use, and there's a bunch of different interactive education items on there. So a little bit about the history of A-CTEC. It originally was called VCTEC, the Victorian Clinical Trials Education Centre, and was established in Victoria, as you could imagine, by the Victorian Research Translation Centre Collaborative and the Western Alliance. So the go-live date was last year on September 26th, and so we're coming up to the one-year anniversary, which is very exciting. And South Australia was actually the first state to gain access to A-CTEC outside of Victoria, and that was in part because of our team, the Australian Teletrial program, as well as SA Health being funders, and we also received great support from HealthTranslation SA, so thank you for that. So not only does the Australian Clinical Trials Education Centre give us access to the education that we'd need to upskill our workforce, but it also helps organizations support the National Clinical Trials Governance Framework, in which all health organizations have to provide evidence of training opportunities to staff working in clinical trials. I personally think that A-CTEC is a beautiful example of what's possible when people within industry across communities come together and work together to build a resource that is useful to them. It's really a grassroots effort, and all of the materials are put together by volunteers in different organizations, as well as the A-CTEC team themselves. They form working groups and listen to feedback and recommendations from their members on what they'd like to hear, and they do their best to make it come to life. So it's really promising. And a little special shout out to Dr. Aman Nafia, who I think is online. She is the director of A-CTEC. So thank you, Dr. Aman, for making this possible and for creating such a supportive community space online within clinical trials. So what's on offer? It's not just online courses, though that is one of the many things that you can get on A-CTEC. So within online courses, there are individual courses as well as comprehensive course packages, educational resources. You can find links, toolkits, as well as webinars or other resources shared by organizations. The GCP in Action scenarios are a discussion forum where real GCP scenarios that have happened at sites are posed, and everybody has the opportunity to discuss it and share their experience and learn together. So these could be ethical dilemmas or any complications that have occurred. And it really kind of gives a forum where we can all learn from each other. The live webinars are one of my favorite parts of A-CTEC. So they are held once a month at the start of the month, and they're on a bunch of different topics, which are usually requested by the members as well. And there are also occasionally symposiums, which are like a longer format of the online webinars. And there's also a live workshop. If you are needing to learn about the investigator site file, there is a 6-hour free online workshop, and it's interactive as well. And I've heard really great feedback from it. Our 3 regional nurses, who one of which is with us today, Emily, sorry to single you out again. They all took it and found it really, really valuable. So there are also competency frameworks. So these exist for investigators, clinical research coordinators, as well as research nurses and clinical trials assistants. And the most recent one is for research support staff. And there's also community networks, content from the conference, career opportunities that can be shared from organizations as well. A-CTEC has really tried to position themselves as a one-stop shop that's free to everybody. And so not only can you find your courses, but you can also come and find community and interact with other people within the field as well. So there are 17 courses currently available. If you take a glance at the list, you'll see that they are from anything from startup and feasibility and trials, as well as all of the aspects of running a trial, from monitoring and auditing, as well as reporting, and all the way to the finish. There's also research ethics and governance courses. The newest course that is available is the standalone GCP course. So A-CTEC had received a lot of feedback saying that a standalone course would be helpful, and they have taken that on board. And just this month, the GCP course, which is 2.5 hours, is ready to suit your GCP training needs. The data management planning and clinical trials course was released in June, and the research ethics and governance courses in May. And so you can see that they're really working hard to release new content often, and they're on top of it. They're a really great team, and we're very happy to be working with them. So here is a peek at the registrations in South Australia to date. So to pull together these numbers, I've been able to use everything from the September 26th online date to present. We can see a lot of different representation, which we like. We've got lots of the LHNs on board with a lot of representation from Colin, Nolan, Solin, and Witchen. You'll see that there are a couple missing. I think it was York and aren't on there. So hopefully we can reach out and get more of the regional LHNs on board. And in the other, you can see a big variety as well. We've got CMAX, we've got Pikawea Health Service, which is an Aboriginal health service near Port Augusta, as well as lots of representation from SAHMRI. Thank you very much for having us. And so 277 total registrations in 1 year. So here's a bit of a bird's eye view just to give us a visual representation of our registrations. You can see a large concentration in Adelaide Metro, which we would expect, but we can also see a peppering outside of there. And so we hope that as we continue to do our work to let everybody know that this platform is available, as well as encourage you all to share it within your networks and anybody who you think might find it valuable. Hopefully we'll see more little red dots popping up all over. So here is a graph of the A-CTEC registrations by month in South Australia. I thought it was very interesting. So we can see that when the platform first came online, we had a big boom of registrations and then a little bit of a lull over the holidays, which is to be expected, and then a nice steady increase from there throughout all of 2023. And I'd love to bring your attention to the yellow portion of the bar, or yellow, that's orange, orange portion of the bar graph, and that represents our MM3 to MM7 communities. And so we love to see that more of our regional clinicians and professionals are learning about the system and are hopping online to use it, where one of A-CTEC's goals is bringing free education to everybody. And we all know that regional clinicians and professionals often don't have access to the same level of resources and continuing education as their metro counterparts. So we hope that A-CTEC can be a part of addressing that disparity. Here is the course completion breakdown. So this is the same thing, everything from the past year. So individual courses, we have 114 completions, with Introduction to Clinical Trials being the most popular course. That makes sense. It's a great place to start. And then we also have the course packages. And the Trial Essentials for Research Support staff has been by far the most popular. And so the way that I've added up the courses is just because the packages involve several different individual courses, I've broken those out so that we can be comparing apples to apples. And so individual courses total is 432, which is a lot. So one more graph, the course completions by month in South Australia. So I think this is really interesting, especially in comparison with our registration data graph. Though there were a lot of people registering with the site, there weren't necessarily a lot of people who were actually going through and completing the courses. So it's very promising to see that in 2023, that has changed, and people are moving through the courses, engaging with the content, and drawing attention again to the orange part of the bar graph that represents our clinicians and professionals in regional, rural, and remote communities. They are engaging with the content as well. So what is next? On October 19th, we have a Managing Diversity and Equity in Clinical Trials Symposium. I would encourage you all to register online. Like I said, it's available for free, and we'll be delving into a lot of valuable knowledge there. An upcoming module is the Trial Protocol Literacy 101. That module is going to talk about how to navigate a protocol and how to relate the information to the investigator's brochure, the PIC, pharmacy manuals, as well as lab manuals, and much, much more. The team has a very long list of items that they're hoping to work on and bring to us, and all of your suggestions are always taken into account to direct the content as well. So here's a bit more information about the October symposium. It'll be from 12:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. on the 19th, and it'll include 3 different sessions that'll delve into the need for data in clinical trials, as well as how to include elderly and pediatric patients, and then also looking at equity of access for cultural and linguistic diverse patients, as well as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander patients. So if you're thinking to yourself, wow, A-CTEC is so amazing, I can barely contain my excitement, how can I get involved? First of all, I'm so glad you feel that way. And I will let you know right now what we can do. So first of all, you could suggest a topic. I know that you might not have memorized the courses available, so it's okay if your suggestion duplicates any of that, but I'd recommend you to all open your phone to go to your Slido and let us know what you're thinking. This could be a suggestion for a webinar, it could be a suggestion for a course, teletrials, I agree. It can really be anything. So I'll give you just a few moments to reflect. Lots of teletrial suggestions. We got a few people typing. Okay, GCP. Yeah, perhaps the new version specifically, clinical trial management, excellent. Randomized control trials. Documentation. IATA training. Okay, so just as a note, there is free IATA training available at the Syneos Health website. They had previously discontinued it, but it is now updated and available. If you need pressing free IATA training for free, I suggest you take a peek there and you will find it. Beautiful. We'll let everybody finish typing. Budgeting, there is actually a webinar. I can't remember what month it was, but one of our recent webinars delved into budgeting in clinical trials. And one of the great things about the webinars is that they're all uploaded online. So even if you're just joining today, or if you're not able to join on the day, you can jump on and watch it after the fact as well. So all of the previous webinars are on there, as well as a lot of the other recordings that have been done, like previous symposiums and conferences. All right. Sorry to the 2 people typing. I feel, oh, 1 person. Okay, type really fast. 3. Okay, I'm sorry. You could, okay, so I will encourage you to come talk to me, deliver those suggestions directly. Here we go, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so how else to get involved? Easiest way to do it is to make an account. This A-CTEC is really kind of by the people, for the people. So hop on there, it's free. Click around, explore. There's so many different resources on there, and it can take a bit of practice to figure out how to navigate to it and find what you're looking for. But don't be shy. Another way is to contact us. Come chat to myself or our ATP team to suggest a topic. Or better yet, if you're feeling very, if you like what you're hearing, you can join the A-CTEC Advisory Committee as well, the Education Advisory Committee. So we meet every 3 months. And it is composed of, it's a national committee with lots of different organizations represented. And, we're looking to recruit experts in the field. It can be having expertise on any item in clinical trials. And the education committee forms working groups and looks through the suggestions to figure out where to take the direction of the content. So if you would like to be involved, we'd love to have you. It's really important to have South Australia representation. So I invite you personally. You can write down the email. This is our Australian Teletrial program email, atp-sa@sa.gov.au. And now time for questions and discussion. So just a reminder, if you have submitted a question on Slido, be sure to submit it on the, is it Zoom? On the Zoom instead. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Renee. That was wonderful. And I agree with you that A-CTEC is amazing. Does anyone have a question in the audience? We'll let you think again. Online questions? Oh, sorry, a question at the back. Tamara.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Very exciting to finally see the numbers increasing so much since we launched 12 months ago. My question is around reporting metrics, and this was something I guess that we talked about initially with VCTEC back then. I'm just wondering whether there's been any progress around reporting and whether we're able to report back to specific institutions or organisations around who's been doing what sorts of trials. Education.
Yeah, absolutely. We've recently gotten access to the reporting system. So it's called IntelliBoard. And so we're able to pull information on what courses are being completed and, what institutions are registering as well, which is how we were able to produce this data here. So if there's anything specifically that you're wondering about, we could look through the reports and see if there's some information that we could get for you.
I don't know whether you'll know this off the top of your head, but I'm interested how South Australia compares with the other states, not Victoria, because it was, Victorian clinical trials education for a while, but since it's been national, is it a similar uptake?
So I wish I knew. They have been very smart at, I can only see South Australia stats. And so I hope to chat to some of our colleagues in the other states and see where their numbers are at as well. But for now, this is all I can tell you. And I know there are also people who have joined online from other states. And so I'm sorry that I couldn't tell you your state's secrets, but that's what we have.
Just being nosy, really.
Yeah.
Are there questions online? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few questions online, but we also, I can see we have Iman from A-CTEC online. So Iman, if you do have anything you'd like to share with the room, please feel free to let us know. So a couple of people would like to confirm where the free IATA training is located.
Oh, right. Okay. So that's on Syneos Health. I don't know if it's syneoshealth.com, but if you Google Syneos Health and make an account, you should be able to go in there and get the IATA training. Yeah.
Great. And there's another one, which is, what would you say, in your opinion, is the biggest training gap across all sites for clinical trials?
That's a good question. I feel like specifically from a teletrials perspective, there's a gap in the process of navigating the ethics and governance process, just because a lot of our regional communities are new to research or, have dabbled a little, but this is really their first time diving in head first. It can be a really confusing bureaucratic process. And so that's one place where I think that everybody benefits from education. And so that's also why my colleague here, Amy's presentation, is so valuable, because it gives us kind of the tools we need to actually be able to put teletrials into practice.
Any more online questions?
Well, Aman has also sent us a message that says, thank you, Renee, introduced A-CTEC comprehensively. Thanks to all the amazing SA team.
Thank you, Aman. We're your #1 fan.
And there's
Just one more question. Last year there was an A-CTEC conference, or this year. Is there one planned for next year?
Yeah, absolutely. So the conference this year, sorry. Yeah, the conference this year was in February or March, and we are looking to plan a 2024 conference as well. So keep all of your eyes peeled. It will be in Victoria most likely, but there'll be online registrations available as well. So I encourage you all to come. It was really well put together and found it really, really valuable.
Excellent. Please thank Renee. Okay, next up we have Tamara Hooper, who's going to talk to us about the Health Studies Australia National Data Asset Program. Thanks, Tamara.
Okay, welcome everybody to SAHMRI. It's really exciting to see so many faces here, and I guess it's just a testament and to those online of what an interest there is in clinical trials and getting everybody together. So I was a little bit overwhelmed by the numbers and the registrations. So clearly there's the need. So my name is Tamara Hooper. I work for HealthTranslation SA as a project manager. I'm also working for the Australian Research Data Commons. So just a quick question around who's actually heard about HealthTranslation? A couple of hands. Excellent. All right, so what I'm going to do then is actually give you a bit of background about the HealthTranslation program and also then explain how the Health Data Australia platform works and then do a bit of a demonstration of the platform. So the Health Studies Australia National Data Asset, or HealthTranslation as it's commonly known, is a national program that makes health and medical research data easier to find. It facilitates access, sharing and reuse of research data. It results in the reduction in research waste, improvements in researcher collaboration, and an opportunity to answer new questions. It aims to support more efficient and effective research and help to improve health outcomes. The potential outcomes of this program vary whether you're actually the data provider, the data user, the organisation, health service, or the participant. So feel free to have a little look at the HealthTranslation flyer, which was only finished last week and arrived on my desk this morning. So we've got plenty of those, and you can see that in the middle section here, there's, you know, what's the value to those different groups. So feel free to pick up one of those. So just a bit of background then around the actual program. So the research community across Australia has actually been working together through HealthTranslation to develop the Health Data Australia portal. This is actually a catalogue of health and medical researchers who register a description of their research. So it's easy to discover. Then what happens is then you have a federated structure of partners across Australia who link the researchers and to those who actually provide the data in order to share that data. This is actually then possible through the searchable online catalogue and also a data request access portal. Importantly, however, when you actually get to see this portal, it's the researchers who created the data who actually always maintain control over the data and are also the final decision makers as to who they share that with. So we've broken it up into a couple of different phases. In phase one, the HealthTranslation program focused on investigator-initiated and academic clinical trials, but what we're moving into now is more a public consultation with other types of trials, such as cohort studies as well as clinical registries. So the Australian Research Data Commons, or the ARDC, is the known owner of the HealthTranslation program. ARDC is one of 24 organisations who's funded by the Commonwealth Department of Education to provide national scale infrastructure for research for Australian researchers. So this is not just health, it's into bushfires, planet, and so you can see there's quite a few sort of big names up there. So to date, the HealthTranslation program has been guided by a committee of peak national bodies, including government, clinical trial networks, HealthTranslation researchers and health consumers. And you'll be well familiar with those logos up there as well. So back in June 2020, the public consultation began in order to hear the perspectives, the priorities, and the principles from broader health research communities, including trialists, health consumers, and many others. So after speaking to the community around their requirements, a co-design phase started in June 2021 to find a solution in order to address those requirements. This involved about 100 people with relevant experience via lots of different working groups. And there's a couple of people here in the audience who are part of those working groups. So after the long collaborative design stage, a node network was established, and the nodes then actually worked together with ARDC in order to build Health Data Australia. What we did was we've actually been integrating our systems and procedures with the vision of data sharing, which hopefully will become the new norm for clinical trials in Australia and into the future. As you can see on the screen, these are the 9 nodes, which consisted of over 70 partner institutions around Australia. And those people that were involved in that co-design stage are now known as the 9 nodes. 7 of those 9 nodes provide regional coverage in most states and territories, and 2 others have specialisations, one in cancer and one in mental health. HealthTranslation SA has been the driving force behind the South Australian HealthTranslation node. So what we've also got here are the development project partners. So we've been working with the Australian New Zealand Clinical Trials Registry around what's actually required in regards to the data for the platform. We've been working with CTIQ as part of their Informed project. And their Informed project is around working up a new patient information consent form template, which includes data sharing, and that template now is available via their website. So that's actually gone through a consumer consultation as well as a legal review as well. So that's available for you. So feel free to go and have a little look at that. We've also been working with ACTA. And ACTA have been helping us, I guess, sort of provide us with sort of engagement guidance as well as the clinical trial networks. Key outputs to date in regards to the clinical trials and what HealthTranslation has achieved are about building this Health Data Australia platform for data discovery, the data request management. We've also been working with the community in order to define what these metadata standards are. As I've said, the CTIQ information consent template. We've been working with all the other nodes around the standard operating procedures for data sharing, and also creating a national network of data providers in a community of practice. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually just explain how the actual platform works before I actually do the demonstration. But I want to emphasise just a couple of key messages for trialists who actually believe in the collaboration, who want to get the most out of your research or get the most value out of the research and your data, but actually have a few concerns around the implications of data sharing. So the outputs of your research projects, such as your study protocol, data dictionary, participant information data, are not actually stored within the actual platform, but stay within your control. So these are the sorts of additional things that that are required as part of being involved in HealthTranslation.
Similarly, your governance policies and your procedures actually stay as your own, but what the platform actually helps you do is actually respond to the data requests. It complements your governance. It doesn't actually tell you how to do it. So what the actual platform requires is what we call metadata. And this is actually the descriptions about your research outputs. So it's actually the descriptions about your data. It's not the sensitive stuff. So first thing that you do is actually, for as far as clinical trials go, is register your data or register your trial with ANCTR. And then what happens when you register that data, that metadata, so the information about your study is already generated. However, it doesn't automatically flow across into the Health Data Australia platform. So the actual part of this is really about the data user. So as a data user, so that might be an academic, clinical or policy researcher. And what they can do is they can actually look at the health data catalogue. They can search that for what data sets might actually be available in order to be able to reuse that data. And so they then go through that catalogue and actually then put in an access request. That access request then actually comes back to you as the clinical trialist, and then you can review that data request and actually decide whether you're actually happy to actually share it with that data user. And obviously, depending upon what types of regulatory approvals that you have, as to whether you can actually share the actual clinical data or not. But again, just to reiterate that the Health Data Australia platform only holds your metadata. It doesn't actually hold your sensitive patient information. So the Health Data Australia platform, as you can see via the URL there, and what I'm going to do, rather than actually take the chance of not being able to log into it via a Zoom presentation, I'm actually just going to show you some screenshots of what the actual platform actually looks like. So this is our homepage for Health Data Australia. It was launched back in only in July of this year. There are now approximately 120 trials, clinical trials listed in the portal, and this will continue to grow over time, as well as, this is sort of the first iteration of the platform. So there'll be, future enhancements that will happen as part of that platform as well. And then we're expecting that there'll be, some other data sets from other types of health studies, such as observational cohorts and clinical registries. So once you log into the actual portal itself, what you'll actually then see is a list of the different types of trials that have been registered in here. And this information, a lot of this information is what you've actually already uploaded into your ANCTR registration. If we delve a little bit further into if there's something that you see that you like the look of, you can then delve further into that. And what happens is that it will actually then show you more information around the types of what the data set is actually about, so the description of the data. It will also show you things like publications that are linked to this data set. It will show you information about the funders, as well as other sorts of researchers and organisations that are associated with this actual data set. And then it will also show you a persistent identifier. So each one of these data sets gets its own little identifier that you can then use as for your citations, etc. It'll also list what other types of data research outputs are actually available. So the study protocol, for example, the data dictionary, are you able to share? The information is all in here as well. And finally, you decide that you actually want access to this data. So you're going to raise a data access request. So you click the button, and then what it does is it actually spits out a standardized data request form. So it asks you information about you know, who you are, what you're planning to do with the data. So your project title, when you want to start, stop. This is all about the secondary user or the data user themselves, what their aims are, what the outcomes are, what sort of outputs they're hoping to get. So it might be a policy, might be a systematic review, for example. And then whether you've actually got ethics approval for this project that you're putting together. And then you hit the submit button. And here in South Australia, what happens is if your trial is actually registered here, then the inquiry, the first level of the inquiry actually comes through to HealthTranslation SA into our inquiries inbox. And then we are the go-between between this system and the actual trialist, so that we can follow up with people. So where do we go to from here? As a data provider, if you think that there's a trial that might be suitable, and what is it that you actually need to do? So most of you are already familiar probably with A-CTEC. So registering your trial in A-CTEC, as I mentioned before, just because you do that doesn't mean to say that this trial is actually going to get pulled across straight into the Health Data Australia portal. There's a few other steps that need to happen as part of that as well. There's a couple of additional fields that we require just for the HeSANTA specific. And then there's sort of different types of trials that we can approach. There's a prospective trial. So if you've got a prospective trial that you actually think that might actually be suitable, then you can use the CTIQ patient information and the data sharing statement in that, and include that sort of information in your protocol, as well as your patient information sheet, submit that to ethics and see how you go. Then those that are retrospective, or you've already finished those, they still can go into this portal. But, you know, I guess what we're saying is that you don't necessarily have to have ethics approval already to share that data. It can still be listed. And then it's a matter of, let's see whether, you know, what the value is actually of that data if somebody comes and asks you for it. And then finally, who is it that you actually need to contact? So if there is something that you are interested in regards to HeSANTA, feel free to send an email through to the inquiries inbox. I think probably all of you have actually heard from me in regards to the registration process around this event. So you should all have my email as well. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Tamara. Are there any questions here in the audience? They're quite a bunch today. I'll let you think. Any online? Oh, you've wowed them with all of the information. I just have one that can't escape that easy. I'm just wondering, since I think July, you mentioned at the start of what the uptake had been. Has there been any activity?
Yeah, so we haven't yet had an expression of interest come through from a data user, you know, requesting access. But I know that the number of trials, certainly when we launched, I think there was about 80 trials listed in there, and now we've got over 120. So it's slowly growing in momentum, and the 9 nodes around Australia are working furiously and doing a lot of, you know, these types of events around awareness, around data sharing particularly.
One more question. So you mentioned that if your trial had finished and you could put your data in the portal, and then without ethics approval, and then someone, if they contacted you, that's the point when the researcher would then apply to ethics to allow the data to be shared.
They can, yes, they can do that. So I guess depending upon, so as a data request that comes through, it may not necessarily just be for the participant level data. Somebody might actually submit a data request and say, hey, I'd like to have a look at your data dictionary or your protocol. So you don't need ethics approval in order to share that. So that might be one scenario. If, however, they are looking for participant level information, depending upon what level of information that they're asking for, if they're asking for aggregate data, then, then that might be something that the PI is happy to share with our ethics. If they are wanting something a little bit more, then I guess then at that time point, then it's a call for the PI to say, do I need to go back to the ethics committee to request a waiver of consent for the sharing of this data? Because as we know, most of those trials have been complete and have been completed for some time.
All right, your last chance for a question. Anyone? Nothing online? All right, thanks, Tamara. We even finished a few minutes early. So just thank you again to everyone for attending and for your interest. It's really inspiring to see so many people interested both in person and online. A big thank you to all of our presenters today. Maybe we could just give them one last round of applause. And to all of our helpers, especially Tamara, who's done a lot of work to get this event organised, Carly, and the helpers with the mics today. So thanks to everyone. We hope this isn't the last of these events. Do we have a QR code tomorrow? So another QR code just before you leave. This will also be available on the website for those who don't get to do it today, but it's just a bit of an evaluation survey on the event. We would like to hold more events. There is a question in here to ask what else you might like to hear about at these events, or whether you think they're valuable in this format, or just to get a bit of feedback about what people want or need in this space. So that would be great if you could do that. The recording will be available on the HTSA website too, in case anyone wants to relive it. But other than that, we're done for today. And yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for attending.